Welcome to our second webinar. It's a real privilege to have 6 fantastic panelists today. New blood, people who, some of them I know, some I don't know so well, and but all you in the audience, welcome also. And we're sharing this on YouTube, so it's live streaming there. I guess you could watch it there if you prefer. But if you stay in the webinar, you can ask questions, post some questions, and we'll see what we can do to answer them. And I've got a bit of housekeeping here, which is anyone who signed up will add you to the Future Gardeners email list, which is pretty significant. It's well over 1,000.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a fantastic initiative, and I'm so happy that you've all signed up at some point. And it's through that you're here, because if anyone listening has not seen the newsletter or even submitted, you can ask us to be in it, and then we'll post your story, and maybe you'd be on the webinar next year. So that's how the ball is rolling really nicely now, and getting great energy. And it was fantastic to win the award at Garden Media's Guild in November. The judges there unofficially said our submission won by a country mile. That was the word they used. So this is making such a difference, I feel, and people are noticing. You don't always. It's interesting with like social media and this kind of thing. You don't always get the feedback, but I get the impression we're making quite a difference. So if you want to ask questions, hopefully all of you who might do can work out how to use the Q&A button at the bottom, and you can always send us a message if there's any problem with that. But Nicola, who's here, is going to be checking the questions, and are you going to read them out at the end or whatever?
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on the questions, not only on YouTube, but also in the webinar. So at the end, do just put the questions either in the comments on YouTube or in the Q&A section of the webinar, and we'll get back to those at the end.
Great. And for those of you who are in the public, so to speak, Rachel's here as well. So she's my social media manager, and we've got a good team now at Homemakers, managing so much going on. And we're going to start right with Albie. So the running order is Alby Jones, Beth Rochford, Karen Waterston, Helen Cross, Tom Houghton, and finally Hannah Niskanen and Ross Walker. But it's just Ross today because Hannah is very close to having a baby. Is that right? It's literally any minute. So anyway, Ross might say more about that. But so it's all live. Albie, let's start. Albie, who I've come to know a bit over the last couple of years. It's been a huge privilege to me to get to know him. Hi, Albie. Really nice.
Hi.
And his mother, Amy. So big family effort from all of them. Like I've also seen some of Albie's sister's rap music. She's an amazing rapper. So there's a lot of talent there, and in Albie's case, that's coming out as growing food, and no dig in particular he really enjoys. And he first caught my notice when just on an Instagram feed, and he tagged me in a post, and what is this? This 8-year-old boy has created a garden, out of nothing. And so I'll let you explain more. Albie, over to you. Thanks for joining.
So I'm Albie. You might know me on Instagram as the No Dig Kid, and I'm 11 years old at the moment. This is my 3rd year of gardening, and I've taught myself on YouTube from Charles Dowding's videos, and I have taught my family as well. And it turned out I really love teaching people how to garden.
Yeah. So I think you were going to talk a little bit about what Albie calls the amazing, wondrous process of gardening, first of all.
So I love how in gardening you can there's so many different things about it, like sowing to transplanting, to harvesting, to compost, and I would even call cooking a part of gardening, as it is also a vital part of it. And from the wondrous thing about it is that a tiny seed could turn into, let's say, a pumpkin, which can be like a really big pumpkin. You could do pumpkin contests, and those wondrous kind of things can really captivate kids like that.
Yeah. Okay. And then did you want to? Oh, Charles, are you asking us something? You're on mute. I wasn't sure if you were asking us something there.
Could-
There you go.
It really made me smile that in some notes that we got, you said, I'll quote you, you said, children aren't the problem, it's the grown-ups. I mean, what can you expand on that? Like, how are you finding resistance in certain places to what you want to do?
So the thing about the gardening, as like you said, Charles, is one of our notes, is children aren't the problem, it's the grown-ups. As the grown-ups don't give children enough opportunities to garden, I don't think, as there's not many schools where you can garden in, and not too many gardening clubs which you can join, especially for kids. And it's just a really vital life skill which people need. And once a child is actually doing gardening, they most of the time they always enjoy it.
Right.
And I think Albie has an example of that, don't you, Albie? Did you want to share? Yeah.
So someone in my football team, their parents were looking at my Instagram account, and they got inspired to do gardening with their child. And he was growing tomatoes and peas and a few more things, and he really enjoyed it. And he's excited to grow again this year. So it just shows that the parents just need to help the kids get in the garden first, and then they'll expand.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah. And did you want to maybe share some of your highlights of your gardening so far?
Yeah. The first highlight is sowing my first seeds and harvesting. The first seeds I sowed were onions, and the first thing I harvested were radish. And also making my first bed, that is a very big part in gardening. That was really, I loved that moment. That was really amazing. Me and my sister really enjoyed it. And of course, I've met you a couple of times, Charles. That was a big highlight of of gardening. I really enjoyed that. And harvesting my first cucumber, because my first year of gardening, cucumbers were really prolific and they were so tasty. If you're going to grow something, I would definitely suggest cucumbers as one thing, because they're really prolific and tasty if they're given the right conditions.
Yeah. And
I just want to say, we'll ask you a question as well, but I'm curious to know if you've got any thoughts about how to get your enthusiasm for gardening more out there, because you clearly got it. You know it's infectious. How have you got ideas of how you can spread this energy?
Yeah. Like I said, like the grown-ups have to like get them out there in the first place, and then just slowly give them a couple of jobs, see what they like the most, and give them, and just start off small with the jobs, and then they'll decide to do more and more jobs and decide which ones more they like more. As like last year I didn't too like watering, but this year I'm starting to enjoy watering a bit more. So I'm starting to enjoy my jobs as well.
And Albie, do you enjoy being told what to do in the garden?
That's one of the worst ways to get enthusiasm. I mean, like, it might just be me, but being told what to do in the garden doesn't, I think with most kids, it doesn't really. It's like not very good.
Yeah,
for
okay. Yeah. We've had a lovely quote here from Kathy Hamill, who's a teacher. She says, "I think you're inspirational, Albie. As a school teacher, yeah, I agree. Kids are natural at gardening." Say your Insta account again. Actually, well, shall I say it's No Dig Kid with all lower hyphens, isn't it? Is that right?
No hyphens, is there? No.
Oh, no hyphens. It's just No Dig Kid. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I mean, that links to some of my work, which is about encouraging people to trust their own instincts. And you must be doing that a lot, because you've obviously been following me closely. But can you think of any things you're doing differently to what I would advise?
Well, I am. What am I doing differently? There's not too much I'm doing differently.
Well, you love experiments,
But yeah,
don't you?
I love experiments, but you do a lot of experiments. I do try different stuff. Like I do an experiment with some of my pots of where I do dig in a bit of nutrients in there to disturb a bit of the soil, just to see if there's any difference. So
Right.
just doing a little bit of digging.
What? Okay, right. Well, I think there's we need to have a talk in private about this. That's brilliant, Albie. It's been really good to hear from you, and there'll be many more occasions, I'm sure. I'll look forward to seeing you this summer at some point, I'm sure, as well. Keep up the great work, and like the whole reason for this webinar really is to share what we know, and thanks so much for doing that. So we'll see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. So next up we have Beth Rochford who works in Surrey, and her project is called Roots Up with a Z. I met Beth at an event in London that I did last June for Grow Urban, which is happening again this June, by the way, organised by Sal Choba. It's a really good event all across London, growing initiatives. And Beth was very low key there, and we got chatting, and yeah, I really like the sound of what she's doing. I'll let her take over at this point because she can explain it better than me, but it's a fantastic initiative working with lots of kids. So over to you, Beth.
Great, thanks, Charles. I don't think I can top Albie though, and I do actually follow you, Albie, and I get lots of inspiration from from you. So, right, let me just share my screen. Bear with me, everyone. Seconds. Let me know if you can see that. Yeah, great. So Roots Up, community interest company, just 12 months in, so hopefully this is a good kind of startup case study. A small space community garden, so about 120 square foot. You can see in the photo there kind of fruits of our first sort of summer labour. And I'm just going to spend a little bit of time talking about how we came to be, or how it came to be, but really just focusing on what I've learned in this kind of first year of gardening with children. So it all started in my local school. I'd actually tuned in to Gardener's World, and with my sort of very tired, my children had gone to sleep, and a segment came on with Taysha and Hayden Smith introducing Lara at School Beans, and it was just, I just thought, this is amazing. And everything that Lara was, but everything that she was doing at her children's allotment in Yeovil, I was just completely captivated. I've been growing kind of, my whole life, but it was a really pivotal moment, and I'd been kind of following some of Charles's advice, but it then kind of, I went down a rabbit hole around kind of future gardeners and horticultural therapy, community gardening, all of this, and I just thought, what can I get going on? And I responded to a call out from my son's school just to help with a bit of seed sowing, and I just sort of jumped into this and spent about 4 weeks doing edible nasturtiums, borlotti beans, setting up my first pallet garden, and saw about 80 of the children, and just was completely captivated. And at the same time, I came across a local lady who'd taken on the lease of the community centre, which had kind of been left languishing. And I was able to become part of this great local initiative. Laura, who was running this, she, not only did I convince her to let me have this lovely east-facing verge of the car park, but also she was going to pay me to run a children's gardening club. She wanted to set up a wraparound children's care to be able to fund the community centre. So I thought, this is, clearly everything was aligned. But this photo was taken at the beginning, first week of July last year, and I had until the kids were back to school to get something ready. So I just sort of moved everything I could really to kind of create a joyful space to start children's gardening. And this is kind of where we got to. So just before kind of the height of summer, I knew once this Red Admiral came along, and by some miracle aubergines were growing. I think it quite helped that we didn't have a fence for a long time and the wind pollination was really high. But I felt like actually I've been able to kind of put everything into kind of getting ready to bring children into a space that would be interesting and sort of inspiring. So the main things I kind of learned in terms of setting up Roots Up, just using local expertise, getting out there. So whether it's kind of bringing a logo idea, getting a graphic designer to do something for free, getting some pro bono advice from an accountant on how to, set up as a community interest company, and just pushing on open doors, not spending any time with sort of negative local people with kind of barriers, but just finding those people that are for this. For me, setting myself up as a CIC meant that I could recoup some of those savings that my own savings that I'd put into setting up the garden once I was getting paid for the children's club sessions. And I could have then sort of taken a salary in the future if I scaled up. So it was worth exploring. I would have looked into a grant up front if I didn't have a matter of kind of 8 weeks. But I'm really pleased to say I've now been able to kind of in retro secure a grant from my local council for year 2. And shout out to Charles, who helped enormously with some support on compost. It's one of those massive costs kind of early on in terms of resources before you're making your own. And then in terms of training, I wanted to have sort of safeguarding training, children's first aid, and my public liability insurance as kind of a minimum. I really just to give myself that kind of security to operating safely. And then, of course, setting up the garden, just full assessment of the aspect. But No Dig made massive light work of being able to kind of create those beds. And even though we're a small space, I wanted to kind of have opportunity for kids to grow a bit of everything. So using the wall with soft fruit, making sure they had space just to kind of put in plugs, and really just trying to make something quickly that was not perfect. It didn't need to kind of be it was going to kind of evolve over time. It was a very small space, but it would kind of be purposeful enough that kids would turn up and think, actually, I want to kind of be a part of this. This looks fun. And leaning on garden centres, plant sellers, all of those people that could help kind of stock the garden to begin with. Left some nettles, of course, and brought in a kind of mini pond and a bird feeder just to start to bring some of that life in as soon as possible, but tried not to create kind of more than I could sustain. I didn't know how this was going to go. It was all going to be trial and error. So there we go. And then I got myself out there. So basically just tried to kind of spread the word that the gardening club, the after school club, was coming, and also run some adult events. And to your point, Albie, it's about the grown-ups and trying to meet them where they are. They know children, look after children, care for children. So trying to run some kind of adult sessions as well, to be able to kind of reduce that kind of fear or that confidence and give them ideas. So the after school club planning was absolutely key. I think even though it needs to be very much turn up, choose what you want to do, let's explore together, I needed to have structure, for every session on kind of the gardening jobs, as well as kind of a craft or a quiet option. And really checking in with everyone at the start, and then having that kind of debrief on what we've actually kind of got out of it was then kind of a little bit of curriculum, but not too much. It needed to feel not like school. And really just letting the children kind of regulate their own behavior, find what's interesting to them, and teach some of the others, kind of as we go. So I just kind of helicopter around, and just really simple growing. It's a learning space, a practice space, but really fun for me to be able to introduce some kind of different bright interesting vegetables, and there's so many amazing heritage vegetables out there that kids don't know about. And yeah, just encouraging garden snacking as long as they kind of asked first, because we did have some chilies in the garden. I was so blown away. My kids, myself, are really, really fussy. So the fact that a child was like pretending to be a snail, just chomping on all the spinach, made me really happy, because they'd kind of grown that themselves. But being able to flex in the space. So often as the after school club, some kids would come having had a really rubbish day at school. We had one particular individual in the group who was neurodivergent. So just making sure that we could kind of flex those activities or find something different. And likewise, if the energy was high, then we would do wheelbarrow races or something that would kind of just bring everyone together for a bit, and then everyone would go back to kind of the things that interest them in the garden. And it didn't matter if things didn't get done, because it was a small space and we could kind of recover afterwards, or kind of keep things kind of growing along. And then toddlers finally. So I have a toddler myself. I wanted to spend more time with older children, but actually this was really simple to do. And there's a huge market out there for parents. So we've got, they're hanging around, or carers with their children, and they're really small, but kind of bigger seeds really worked. And they might just spend the whole time, chucking water around, but it's all about that kind of formative experience in a positive, kind of growing space. And then hopefully having the opportunity for them to kind of keep doing that as they grow up. So yeah, I think that's it for me. I'm conscious of time, but just to share how I came into this. So my granddad was a gardener. He grew a mean patch of melons outside, and had a national collection. His dad was a gardener, but it was only kind of later on, kind of as I went into the kind of the rat race and a business career, that kind of spark that I'd had kind of came back to me, as I kind of talked about today, and it's made me feel like I'm so incredibly lucky that I had that spark. I want to help create more of those sparks, you know, for people that won't have that, because that's the bit that people come back to. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Beth. That was a wonderful presentation and lots to take from it. I love your little bit about toddlers at the end, and then your grandfather too, actually. So yeah, many thanks. Now we are moving on to Spain. The Karen Waterston got into gardening during lockdown, like so many people, but was in Spain, northern Spain, and she is an English language teacher. And let's hear from her how this all unfolded. It's a great story.
Thank you, Charles. It's a delight to meet you. I've followed you for ages.
Nice.
So I'm really honored. So we have a garden called the Garden of Ideas in a high school in Catalonia, and I work with 11 and 12-year-olds. We have 3 groups that rotate every 3 months. So unfortunately, the kids can't see the end. So we have an Instagram for that, so they can see the end. And the main idea is to create magic and curiosity in the garden. And it's called the Garden of Ideas because it's all about ideas and experimenting. So we have 8 groups, color groups, and each group has their own parcel. So I'll just show some of the things that we are doing. Can you see that? Yep, okay, great. I'm just going to bring it down so that I can see myself. So this is the Garden of Ideas. Oops, why is it not going to the next slide?
I think you just,
there we go, wrong button. So we started 3 years ago. We have a very inspirational head teacher.
Karen, I think, Karen, sorry to stop you there, but
Yep.
we still can't see it. I'm sorry.
Oh, you can't? Okay, no
We've
problem.
got your Zoom.
We've just got your Zoom.
Oh, you just got my
can.
Zoom. Oh no. Okay, wait. Let me go back to stop share. Okay, sorry. Let me
No,
start
don't
again.
worry.
Can you see that?
Yes,
Yes.
we can see it perfectly now.
Okay, great. Okay.
Okay.
So we started 3 years ago. We have an inspirational head teacher who's very interested in getting kids outside. So we started with nothing, and now we have a covered greenhouse and some logs to sit on outside. And these are the parcels. We name them interesting colors like turquoise and amber and scarlet, and each group has their own parcel. This here in the orange box is one of the experiments we do with potatoes. So we grow potatoes in different, like a cardboard box inside the greenhouse and outside, in tires, in a paper bag, in a tote bag, in a bucket. And the kids hypothesize about which ones are going to produce the most potatoes. And then they dig them all up and check. And the last group got tiny, tiny little potatoes because it was so dry inside the greenhouse in the summer. We have a drought in the summer. But they were delighted because their 3 tiny little potatoes got 0 on the scale. So that was a great experiment. They make their own support structures for peas and beans. So I make 3, you can see them. Oh no, you can't. I make 3 or 4 sort of traditional support structures, and they feel them and test them to see which shapes are strong. And we have a worksheet to guide the thinking. Then they make their own and put them into the garden. So I love the star support system for the for bees and peas. We also, because we're in a drought, we create water systems to put into the ground and we learn about why it's important to get the water to the roots. So you can see on the left, we have plastic buckets, plastic bottles with thick ropes, and we also try with thin ropes, and we've tried with cotton strips as a wicking system to get the water right down. And this on the left group designed a way to fill up the water without having to bend over through all the plants. And on the right side is an experiment that didn't actually work, but it doesn't matter because it's the garden of ideas. And so we left it there for them to see a few weeks later whether the water actually got to the ground or not, and why not. And we also have, you can see in the middle there, the Olia system with clay pots, and we bury those. Massive problem with that is the snails love them. So we have to do a lot of snail hunting. We also experiment with growing onions together or separately, and which one grows better, whether they're in a bunch or whether they're not in a bunch. What do you think? Any ideas? I can't hear anybody. Albie, what do you think? Do they grow better all bunched together or separately?
I think they'll grow the same-ish, but in a bunch you can have more harvest.
Absolutely. So that was, and it was really interesting that they actually love being together. The onions grew really well together, almost like they were a big sort of nice warm family together. The kids take home all the produce in pockets, in bags. The people who come into our classroom afterwards are always complaining that there's a big smell of onion and garlic. There's leaves everywhere. But no matter. We also use whatever happens in nature to, like as a learning point. So I leave everything till the first frost comes in about November. And some plants die and some don't. And we ask, why is that? And learn about why that is. It's absolutely fascinating. And we also do an experiment with seeds. So we put a whole bunch of different seeds of different weights and different sizes into a balloon, pop the balloon over a mat and measure how far the seeds go. So we learn about, and then we have a session on how seeds disperse and where they go and what happens to them. So it's all around noticing and curiosity. We do a lot of measuring. This is our fried broccoli that's like about 30 centimeters. One kid held it up to her head because it was the same size as her head, which is brilliant. Favorite things to do? Make mud, mixing water and compost and making it go shuggle, shuggle, shuggle in the wheelbarrow. Measuring garlic to space out the garlic at the back of the greenhouse. And dirty hands is the best feeling ever. So we also use bits of blocks to do some painting to label the plants. And another favorite activity is hunting for snails. I wanted to do an experiment by putting a silver pen on the back of the snails with a number, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 meters, and see which ones came back to the garden. But there's so many, and it rains, and we couldn't see which ones had come back. But we talked about how far they can go and which ones might come back. We also do an experiment. This is red cabbage juice, which you can make is a pH measurement. And so we measured the pH of the soil. We started with vinegar and baking soda to see the colors, coffee strips in the cabbage juice. Unfortunately, kids have a very strong reaction to cabbage juice. So next year we're going to do it outside, not inside. It's really stinky. But it was good to be able to learn about pH in the soil. Now, the kids that I work with don't speak English very well. They're 11 and 12. They're in a bilingual Catalan-Spanish school. So, and I do it all in English. So we need a lot of guidance. And so I make instructions in the different color groups that they follow. And we do actions, a lot of actions of digging and watering. So I have half the group outside and the other half of the group inside, where the other teacher works with them and does a lot of the theory behind companion planting, water systems, no-dig, lasagna garden, and then they come outside and we experiment a lot. And we do things we can hear and smell, a little worksheet outside. And this is to guide, we do worksheets where we use like guided discovery. So instead of, like Albie was saying, you don't like to get told what to do or what the answer is, you want to work it out for yourself. So we have questions that guide, like look at this and what's the difference, and look at this and look at this. And I deliberately plant plants that don't really like each other. to see what the difference is. So we now have some cabbages that are bullying the beans, and the kids can see how that's working. Unfortunately, we have to do assessment, but we have it because it's part of school, but we make a poster with 3 things: what makes me go wow, what I talk to my friends and family about, and what I want to know more about. And because each group is only for 3 months, one group writes a letter to the next group of what they've done, what their favorite things are, and a message. And usually the message is, look after the plants, you're going to love it. And where's my stop share? Somewhere. Here. And there we go.
Karen, that blew me away. That's so cool, everything you're doing. It's so cool.
Thanks.
You've thrown out so many ideas there that
yeah, that's like a few of them. But the best thing is, like Albie says, it's about being curious, not being, kids will come to me and say, one pulled up a garlic and said, what if I plant this over here? And I said, go for it. And then another one found seeds in water, sprouted, planted them. They grew a couple of weeks later, and his face was like, no way. It's very, yeah.
It was very rewarding for
very
you.
rewarding.
And is it spreading nicely through the school a bit, would you say?
Yes. So there's some of the other teachers come out, like the yellow flower on my Instagram. One of the art teachers, the biology teacher borrowed that to show about all the different parts of a plant. And some of the other, we have a weather station there. The geography teacher comes out. So we're slowly getting the other teachers and students involved, and everyone's curious about what happens in the garden, and they always want to go out and have a session in the garden.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you so much.
See you again.
And could I just say something, Charles?
Yeah.
Just because I think people will have joined maybe after Charles said his initial introduction. If you do have a question you want to post to Charles, or if you have a question you want one of our speakers to answer, please do put it in the Q&A part of the webinar or in the chat on YouTube Live. We're keeping an eye on both of those. So thank you.
And we've had questions whether this is being recorded. Yes, it is. So on YouTube, you will be able to watch it later if you have to leave at any point. And we are now going from Spain to Scotland, slightly different climate. So Helen Cross, who's been working with children a long time, and I've had quite a few chats with her over the years and about how to fund it, among other things. She's a busy mother and doing mostly voluntarily. So over to you, Helen. I'm sure you've got lots to share with us.
Thank you. I've got very big shoes to fill following the last 2 speakers. I'm just going to try and share my screen. Hold on. Can we see that? Oh, hold on a minute. It all went so well initially. Hold on. Screen share. No.
Looks like it's working.
Is it working?
Oh no, we're onto your Zoom.
No. Oh, I'll give it one more go. Hold on. Oh, sorry, guys.
Don't worry.
Well, that's embarrassing.
Oh, don't worry, Helen, honestly. And
Hold on, I'm going to pull it back up this way and see if it works.
You can always share your presentation afterwards, couldn't we?
Yeah, hold on. I'll.
It's so beautifully done, your presentation, Helen. So
No pressure. Right, here we go.
No pressure.
Sure.
It looks like it's
It says
starting to work.
double click to enter full screen mode.
Yeah,
There we go.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Narrow.
It is somewhat narrow. Right. Here we go.
Yes,
Let's go
still
for
you.
it.
Okay. Well, as you can tell, I'm not an IT guru. I'm Helen. I'm a writer and an author in Glasgow. Very, very different to Spain. It's very wet all the time. We get one day of summer sometime in July. And during lockdown, I wrote a book called Grow, Cook, Inspire, which is a companion for teachers and for parents to encourage more of us to grow and cook. And this stems from my background of actually being a farmer's daughter, which I'm very proud of. My family still farm in the southwest coast, but I realised that when I left home at 17 to go off to uni and never returned to rural living, that I wanted to make sure that my children had a similar upbringing to me in our very suburban garden. And These three lovely boys here are my three children. And they are the people who have really inspired me, because I actually had written down, Albie, you'll be pleased to hear, it's the adults in the room that need to step up and take charge of the situation. We can't even leave it to teachers, because working with schools, I know how stretched they are and how resources are really tight. So it's the people at the top, the people in government that really need to step up, because we've got big issues at the moment. I don't want to start off negatively, but when you've got 1 in 10 children who've never visited a farm and 40% of children who don't realise that soil is fundamental to where our food comes from, we've got some problems. So that is why I volunteer in our local school, which has 700 children in it. And I work with the teachers and I garden with them. And I've been doing that for the last 5 years, since 2020. And I created a volunteer group. It's called Netherley Budding Minds. And we work with the children in the school and the nursery. It's a big school on the south side of Scotland, on the south side of Glasgow. And what keeps me going is basically the joy that I see from the children and the transformation of the children. I get kids who perhaps don't behave very well in school, are a bit cocky, are too cool for school, but actually see by the end of our time with them, I've got them enthusiastic about the dirt underneath their feet. And I've yet to meet a child who doesn't like digging for worms and getting their hands absolutely filthy. So it's about making it fun, beautiful, but also productive. That is my three key things. This year, I'm a great believer of asking for forgiveness rather than permission. So I've taken over a bit of ground that hasn't been used by the school for a while. And I do grow a lot of veg because I love cooking. But this year we are growing a cut flower garden that will involve the wider community, because I've also yet to meet a child who doesn't like making money. So this is going to be a garden where the kids will be able to grow their own cut flowers and sell it to the wider community. But also, because we're in Glasgow and the school holidays and whatnot, it is difficult for us to produce a lot of food. And over the summertime, not a lot of people are about. We all go away to sunnier climes because it is so wet and miserable. And I do question why I've come back to Glasgow from London. But the principles are the same, whether you're growing veg or fruit. We start with the soil. And as we all know, I'm sure many of you know, the no-dig method of gardening is brilliant for children because it doesn't involve back-breaking work. And it's good for my back as well. And I love, at the moment, for the last 2 weeks, I have been teaching children all about soil. I've got 60 primary fives, which is 9-year-olds in Scotland, for the next 7 Mondays. And I take them in groups of 10 over those 7 weeks. And we have been learning all about soil. So they now know that 95% of their food comes from the soil. And you'll find 1,400,000 earthworms in an acre of farmland. They love stats, and it's all about bringing alive the soil underneath our feet, because the soil is quite literally alive. And their enthusiasm is worth its weight in black gold, so to speak. So setting up a cut flower garden, if this is something that you think might be quite a good idea for your school or community garden, then ask them what they like. Make sure they are involved and they are responsible, because you want to give them that sense of ownership, and that way you'll find they're more enthusiastic for longer. What scents do they like? What memories do they like? Get them to create a mood board. This is something that I picked up from Arthur Parkinson in one of his books, is snipping out magazines and seed catalogues and flower catalogues and get them to create their own mood board. Mark out your plot as you would be doing for veg. And the excess seedlings that you'll grow, you can sell those on as well. And the cut flower sales can coincide with the school curriculum around Easter time, summertime, and again in autumn time when we've still got dahlias and sunflowers, hopefully, unless we get a frost in July, which I wouldn't rule out. What to plant? All the first ones here can all be grown from seeds. So we've got sweet peas, sunflowers, dahlias, cosmos, calendulas, and nasturtiums. Sweet peas are the gatekeeper to cut flowers for children, because the seeds are quite fun to grow them in toilet roll tubes. And the more you cut, the more you get. And they're beautiful, the scent is wonderful, and kids also love snipping the tendrils as well. And you can also create a really rich and colourful and biodiverse garden as well through growing cut flowers. So you're touching on that environmental factor. And also there's a lot of chat about food miles, but also the same can be said for the cut flower mile market, I guess. So you're teaching people about where cut flowers can come from, and the ones you'll find in Tesco's wrapped in plastic have been grown in far-flung places, whereas homegrown cut flowers are much kinder for the environment. And it's a fun and productive and a beautiful thing to do. And again, that entrepreneurial spirit, I do quite like to galvanise that. And also, children love to give things to their friends and family as well. And I think that's a really important thing to do. And it's something we did during lockdown, which was really well received by everybody. Just very quickly, we've also created a dye garden, which is another fun thing to do with kids and also adults. I do quite a lot of workshops with adults, and this is a flower pounding exercise. So if you're really anxious or you're just having a really bad day, then I have seen adults really enjoy pounding flowers and creating really beautiful tote bags as well. And kids love doing this. It's great fun. And it can be done with anything really in your garden. You'll be amazed. And it's another gatekeeper about telling children, educating children about the multi-uses of flowers and plants. And just finally, top tips. I try and get your school on board. I do find this quite difficult. It's a big school, it's quite an academic school, and perhaps gardening isn't at the top of the agenda, but I think every school is missing a trick. If I had a magic wand, there would be a school garden in every single school, and it can touch on the curriculum, it can educate, and it can inspire. And the jobs that are possible from horticulture are huge, and we really need to make sure that we're telling people this. And we also have a responsibility to grow the next generation, to make sure that our next generation are healthy and strong and can carry us through as well. These are just a few quotes from some of the kids that I've been teaching over the last couple of weeks. And I had a message from one parent who said that it had been the best day at school for such a long time. And that's the main reason why I do it, to be honest. I do it as a volunteer because I find it really rewarding. And I just love seeing the change in the kids. And I think it's really important to make these memories, because kids will remember these things out with the classroom as well. So thank you ever so much.
Wow. Well, you filled the big shoes and more there. That just brilliant. It reminded me about the front cover of my book. This is not a plug, by the way. I don't know if you see this.
But they're similar.
When the original front cover idea came from Welbeck, the publishers, the child on it, just keep it there a sec, had a horrible, I thought, green glove on their hand. And I said, no, that's got to come off. We don't want to give that impression that they must wear gloves, because we're hearing it more and more now, aren't we? Microbes, the value of microbes. And when you said in your presentation, it's brilliant, dirty hands, and they want to do that.
They do. And we think that really well-known quote of, like, in 1 tablespoon of soil, you're going to get more microbes than humans on planet Earth. I mean, it gets brought up time and time again, but children love that. They love to feel part of it. So yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I loved it when you said, they all like to make money as well.
Yeah.
So that was just great, and just bring some humour into it too. That always really helps. So our next presentation, thank you, Helen, is Tom, and I heard of Tom through Lara Honor of School Beans. And she said, you must get in touch with Tom. He's doing amazing things in Lincoln, where he's bought a piece of land in the middle of town. I think Lincoln is well known for land being cheaper than in the rest of the UK. Tom might have some views on that, but however he did it, he's now the proud owner of a working market garden, and he's been working out ways to make it work for the town as well. So Tom, welcome, and we look forward to hearing.
Thank you. Yeah, like everyone said, I've got some big shoes to fill now. It is inspiring. I've written down some notes here. Everyone that's talked so far, I've thought, wow, that's something I can take away. So it's amazing. You're always learning. Let me share my screen. Can everyone see that okay? Can I get rid of that?
We're just seeing your Zoom at the moment, Tom.
Let's bring that up.
One.
There you go.
Can we see everything?
Yes, all good.
Cool, lovely. Right, hello. Yeah, thanks, Charles, for having me. It feels strange to be talking to people about what I'm doing, really, but there we go. I'll give it a shot. I'm Tom Houghton. I'm 21 years now in the horticultural industry. Originally at 17, I went to college, left and went into a modern apprenticeship at an agricultural college. The classic story, I worked my way up in the landscaping industry, sort of went into senior management, working in the city. It all got very stressful, and I lost the love for it a little bit, really. I saw Charles's videos online and sort of had a revolution or a moment and thought, wow, I want to do that. I want to market garden. I want to be growing fruit and veg. And as Charles quite rightly said, land is prohibitively expensive in the south where I grew up. And I just started looking around, looking for the right plot. I looked all over the country and I ended up finding a market garden in Boston that the previous owner had unfortunately passed away. But it gave me an opportunity to purchase it and start the restoration process. So over the last 4 years, I've put in 54 no-dig beds. We rescued a polytunnel from another social enterprise in Sheffield. I took that down probably in the coldest weekend of January 23. So that wasn't so much fun, but brought it back here, got it up and have made it a productive space. On site, I've got a heritage fruit orchard. There's about 180 trees. We've been doing lots of restorative pruning. The previous owner, as I say, had been getting elderly. He'd obviously not been able to do as much work on the trees as he once had. So it's been giving me an opportunity to get them back into a good state and nice and productive. We've planted 40 new trees on site. Some of them have been provided by Thatcher's Cider. We've also had the council, Lincolnshire County Council, in fact, have got a community orchard programme running. They very kindly supported us and our children's lessons and have donated 10 trees this season. So we planted them during one of our children's lessons. We've planted over 5,000 bulbs in the orchard and made some wildflower grass areas as well to support the pollinators. As you can see in my photo there, we've just completed the restoration of 2 traditional Dutch-like glass houses. So they're an icon of Lincolnshire. You see them around, but a lot are falling into disrepair and being replaced by modern polytunnels. So we've got one as a seed raising space, and now we've got one as an indoor teaching space for our adult and children lessons. How did I get into teaching children? If you'd have asked me 5 years ago and said, Tom, you're going to be teaching a group of 24 children once a week, I'd have said, really? I'm not sure if I would, but a chance meeting in January at something called Bongo's Bingo, actually, in Lincolnshire, in Lincoln City. I got chatting to someone and she was the deputy head at the primary school, which it turns out is just over the road from me. I explained about my market garden and we kind of had this brainwave and said, well, it'd be great if the children could come into the garden. And I said, yeah, I'm happy to support that. So I developed a broad curriculum following the jobs I do in our active market garden. So the children follow me with sowing, growing, harvesting fruit and veg throughout the season. I delivered 2 sessions on a Tuesday afternoon with 24 children. We're supported by a teacher from the primary school, and we have 2 or 3 TAs that come with us as well. A general day is the children walking over from the school. It's about a 3-minute walk. We go in the welly den, we put our wellies on. I give them the option of having gloves. They don't have to wear them. Some do like to. Others, as we've said, love just getting their hands dirty, and I think that's really important. We walk down through the orchard. We feed the chickens. We collect the eggs. Don't seem to get many takers on cleaning out and mucking out the chickens, so that's a bit of a shame, but that's okay. I'll let them go. We then do a 2-hour activity, so that will be at this time of the year. It's seed sowing, it's prepping for the season ahead. Through the summer, that's obviously harvesting the glut of fruit and veg that's growing. As autumn begins, the fruit orchard comes into its own, so we do a lot of picking of apples. The children take them back to school, and again, as Helen says, I encourage them to then sell them at school, give them to their friends and family. They get to make a little bit of money that they can use in the garden. And then we move on to prepping the garden for winter as well as we go into later autumn. During all the sessions, I actively encourage the children to try things, as someone else mentioned, always making sure that they ask so that they don't pick the wrong thing and eat the wrong thing. But I actively encourage them trying to get hands-on, enjoy what they're growing. And it's really interesting seeing some of them say, "Oh, I don't like a radish," and then they watch their friends start eating them, enjoying them, and you can almost see them go, "Oh, wow! Oh, if he's enjoying it, maybe I should try it." So that's really lovely to see that. Impact. What do we think the positives have been so far? Well, improved fitness levels for the children, activity levels, willingness to try new vegetables. They're all, as they can see things growing, they understand where their food's coming from. It inspires them. They have a better understanding and a willingness to try things. They're connecting with nature and the environment. They're learning how to support nature around them, the birds and the bees, watching the birds in the orchard, listening to them. They develop stronger friendships, definitely. We really champion teamwork as well, as you can see in the photo there. That was us putting some bamboo canes in ready for our runner beans last year, but that team building is really effective, I think. The school have also noted they've seen massive improvements in children's social, emotional and mental health and general well-being. So that's a real positive. And I think most importantly, I'm passionate about children learning about horticulture and learning about maybe a career in it. It's fun, it's rewarding. Gardens are always growing. There's an abundance of work out there. So inspiring the future generations of gardeners. And we've got a parent statement there. She's fortunate, but 2 of her children now have attended each year, and she's a real advocate of the business. She speaks very highly and promotes us on social media, and it's lovely to hear and makes you think you're doing the right things. We are registered as a CIC. I think it's important to touch on, as Beth maybe said, reasons for being a CIC. It was a natural structure for our business. It helps us with our goals and objectives. We gain support from other members of the community. It allows us to connect with other social enterprises. A lot of what we grow here goes to food banks, a community meal project where they feed about 180 diners a week, twice a week. We also get to apply for grants that we could use for our adult education and our children's classes. We've also had the support of the Boston Area Town Committee. They had an empowering communities grant last year, and we got some wellies, overalls, PPE, sun cream to make it a fun experience in the garden. And what have we learned? I suppose, don't sweat the small stuff. Nothing's perfect lines. Let the children have fun outside. Having an indoor space to get out of the cold, windy days, I think is important. Sometimes a lesson that I think will be fun actually doesn't seem to hit the spot. And who knew? I think one of last year's most fun tasks was weeding, which that's great. Have an army of weeders. So that was lovely. Teamwork makes the dream work, and a good support network of teachers and volunteers, I think, is really important. So they're some of the main things I've learned. And there you can see is some of the things we're doing, adding extra clubs, adding a Saturday morning club and also a holiday club. I think it's going to be really important. We did some crowdfunding earlier this year. We reached our target, and we're soon going to be launching a new class that will allow more children into the garden. I think I've run over a little, but that's about it really. And thank you everyone. Let me get back to my main screen. Lovely.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Brilliant. I've been keeping a close eye on time actually, but I lost it there, and I'm really glad you ran over because that was all so fascinating. I'm really blown away myself. So many takeaways from all these meetings, and one that I caught in Helen's was one of the children saying, "I feel calm," and it links to our next presentation, which is working with kids who haven't had or I've had difficult times. It reminds me a bit, actually, what Ross is going to say in a minute, I think, about Joe, a gardener I met, a head teacher actually from Surrey, and he ran 3 Prue Schools pupil referral units. And he actually said the first thing he did when these really difficult kids arrived at the school, he sat them down in front of one of my videos. He said that really calmed them down, if not sent them to sleep. But that thing of gardening, let's hear it from you, Ross. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that.
Hi everyone, Charles, Nicola and Rachel, thank you so much for having me on to talk today. It's a real privilege. Charles, you're a complete hero of mine, so yeah, feel really proud to be on this talking. Let me start sharing our presentation. Give me a sec. Here we go. All right, is that working?
We can see that.
Okay, so we're in. Okay, so my partner Hannah and I co-founded Let and Grow about 5 years ago, and over the 5 years we've grown, and now we're a CIO, and we're a charity, which has taken a while and been quite a difficult journey, but now that we're here, I feel like it's like the organization's about to blossom. And sorry, I'm struggling to get through to the next. Oh, I'm pulling forward. Here we go. So yeah, we started about 5 years ago, and we focus on enhancing people's connection with nature. And I guess what people ask is, what does that really mean? What does enhancing people's connection with nature? And we help do that by running workshops, running courses, doing away days for inner city schools, corporations, and urban communities. And why would you do that? We've realized that by running these courses, it's helping people. Kids mental health is improving by getting out of the classroom. You're getting schools growing their own produce on site, and we're also getting a generation of people to love, care, and support our planet, which at the moment needs quite a lot of help. So here's some of the stuff that we've been doing. These are our projects. Let me run through what we do. Gosh, I'm feeling very nervous all of a sudden. I wasn't expecting to feel so nervous, and suddenly it's all coming out. So this is one of the first projects that we ran. This is Yinkilora's playground launch. We had 2 local schools come down to a park in Dagenham, and we ran workshops getting them to do bird watching, and they planted a target with crocuses, got their hands in the dirt. Every day that kids come out with us, we do a bit of mindfulness. So we get them to breathe, do meditation, do a little bit of yoga, and we check in with them using something called a zone of regulation. So we ask them, what color are you feeling? Are you feeling green, which is good? Are you feeling red, which is angry? Are you feeling blue, which is depressed or sad? And that's us quickly checking in with them, and also getting an idea of how everybody's feeling, because what we're noticing is obviously schools focus a lot on academia, but they're focusing less on people's well-being. And I think that's what we really want to drum in, is getting people's well-being and mental health up. And gardening is proving to be such a great way of doing that. In my personal opinion, I think that the more in touch you are with nature and the more outdoors you are, the better your mental health is. That is until you have to do a presentation to people, and then you get very sweaty. So this is another presentation that we did. This is another show that we did, another project that we did with London Transport Museum. This is Hannah on the left slide doing yoga with a bunch of primary school kids. They came along to one of the local parks that we look after. We had them planting a mixture of herbs that they didn't really know the name of. I mean, I didn't realize that there was such a thing as pineapple sage, and that isn't actually one of the kids smelling the pineapple sage, but you can smell this sage and it does smell like pineapple, and it was great. You know, they came along. There must have been maybe 60 in each group, and we had them each given a pot to plant, and they chose where in the garden they wanted to plant it, which was really nice. All right, let's keep moving. So this is our kind of champion space. This is Ealing Alternative Provision. We've been working with Ealing Alternative Provision, which is a pupil referral unit, for just over 3 years. We've put a kitchen garden in, a teepee with an outdoor music studio, garden beds. We do fire cooking, tree climbing, fruit and vegetable growing, and it works. Getting kids who are troubled, who have behavioral issues or mental health issues, getting them outside, getting them onto the land, getting them growing, and just being out of the classroom full stop works. You see sometimes you'll see very quick transformations with students where, you know, you'll have a kid who's looking very closed in and closed up, and they'll open up once they come outside. And it works. This is our kitchen garden. The fruit and veg that we grow goes into the school canteen, and the chef cooks it. Then we also run a flower operation, a flower business out of the school called Punchy Bunch, which we have a farmer out in the countryside that grows the majority of the flowers, and then we grow a gestural amount of the flowers in school. But they're all collated in the school, and the kids bunch them up, and we go and sell them. And that employs one of the students every Friday to go sell flowers, giving them some skills, allowing them to communicate with the public, and also just, you know, getting them a bit of cash in hand, which a lot of these kids need. Working with flowers is also so calming. I didn't actually know how calming it was, but it really leaves everyone feeling very relaxed in space, and that comes across with the students. Okay, let's keep going. So this is John Chilton Primary and Secondary. They're an SEND school, so special educational needs. They love gardening. They love getting outside. It works. They get the benefit of coming out in a way that I didn't expect to see, and they absolutely love it. I can't express how important it is for kids who obviously struggle to get outside because they're in wheelchairs or they have mobility issues. Getting them out into the garden really is a lovely thing to see, and I get as much of a reward helping these kids get out and grow stuff and cook on fires and be outdoors as they do. It's very humbling working with these kids, and yeah, I love it. This is the middle photo, is them doing their pumpkin carving, and what we've done is we've taken all the seeds from the pumpkins and we're about to plant them, all these little plants, around one of their main fields, and just grow all of next year's pumpkins on site, which will be really fun. Okay, let's keep going. This is our last site. This is Chiltern Manor, which I was living on the little flat at the end of the manor, which I absolutely loved. I'm a London boy, grew up, Hannah and I both London kids, and we lived here for 2 years, which was just absolutely brilliant. And if you look at the right hand slide, this was originally wasn't a used kitchen garden, and over the 2 years that we were there, we turned it around and started growing on it. I liked I like gardening barefoot. We had kids that came out, they had their shoes off. We walked around and planted things and experimented and learned how to grow. I mean, we're definitely not perfect growers, but we learned a lot here. And it was a real joy growing this space. And this is what we are doing currently. Over March, we're planting 5,000 trees for Ealing Council in one of the new parks called Pear Tree Park. We've got all the schools that we have a relationship with coming down and planting trees. Planting trees is good. Planting trees really is food for the soul. It makes me feel grounded and healthy, and works your body and works your mind, and you feel very relaxed planting trees. And the kids so far that have come down have really enjoyed it. What we want to do is continue doubling our numbers with trees. So we started off, we planted 1,000 trees, then we did 2,000, and now we've just done 5,000. As it grows, I mean, I have aspirations of doing big international tree planting campaigns. How that happens, I'm not that sure, but you know, I want to do it, so I'm going to try my best and see if I can get it together. This is lovely. I really do feel in my element planting trees. In a weirdly, maybe, and Charles, you might not like this, but maybe more than planting fruit and veg, which is maybe sinful saying that on you're kicked off the show now. You're kicked off the webinar.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering where you're going to grow your vegetables, and London's going to disappear beneath trees from what you're saying. It sounds amazing, actually.
Maybe.
Have you finished, Ross, or have you still got some more?
Well, this is my last slide. I'm aware I've run over. Okay. So just for the future, this is long-term vision, long-term goals for houses and homes for Let and Grow. I'm looking at like forest restorative housing models and school models that aid in reforestation, and these are some of the designs that we have for future schools and future homes. That's my last slide.
That's a brilliant note to finish on. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. How are we going to do the questions, Nicola?
Well, I've got a few here that I can read out to you. Or do you want to actually start with this one here? It's from Ruth Fitzgerald Harrington.
Okay, so hi to the noted kid. I love my kids helping me in the garden. They want to grow melons and tomatoes. What do you think is the best way to encourage them to be more proactive in the watering and care for these plants as they grow? And what makes you inspired to get out every day into the garden?
That's for you, Albie.
So, let's start off with the watering. So I think a good way to do the watering is to find ways to make it fun. So like when you do watering, you could add mulch on it and say this keeps the water in the soil, and you could find a fun way of telling them about how the mulch works, and if that when you do the watering the water won't just evaporate. And you can also tell them about evaporating if they don't already know that. So that's a good way of teaching them as well a few stuff. So you could just make the watering fun like that, and just, like I say, slowly do it, and they'll get into it. And make all the jobs fun. Don't tell them like directly what to do. Like with the tomatoes, you might de-leaf them, and you could make the leaves into fertilizer afterwards, and say this will feed the plants. Then you can feed the plants with like a week later, feed the plants with tomato fertilizer. And
yeah, brilliant. Yeah, nice. Okay, that's lovely tips. Thanks very much. Okay, right.
I've got just one other here, another one. And we've had so many people watching both on YouTube and in the actual webinar, over like 120 people in YouTube and about 80 or so in the actual webinar. So that's a really great number of people tuning in to listen to everyone. One of the questions I did see was from My Slice of Gardening, Charles.
My Slice channel, yeah.
My Slice of Gardening, as the mother of...
as a mother of teens, can
be difficult.
It can be difficult to keep
engaged.
So,
yeah, teenagers, any ideas from maybe any of our speakers as to how to engage with teenagers?
I think that's why it's key to begin them as early as possible. It's a bit like sport. You get kids playing lots of sport and they'll come back to it later on as well. But I guess Karen might know because she's dealing more with secondary kids, but it is just about making it fun and giving them the responsibility of something, I think, to be honest, so that they feel that it's theirs, I think is the key thing.
Thank you, Helen. Yeah, I must say, Joe's comment, who ran the PRU schools in Surrey, he got them market gardening and selling stuff and allowed them to keep some of the money. A few of you mentioned that. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. A bit of financial interest is very strong for all of us. So.
Yeah, especially teenagers.
Teenagers, yeah.
Can I add to that? Yeah. We do quite a lot of quizzes, like garden treasure hunts, as at the beginning, just to raise the interest and awareness. So things like, you know, out of these vegetables, how long, which is the longest to take to grow and which is the shortest time to grow. Finding, you know, how many flowers can you find of different colors in 30 seconds. And it's just running around the garden, familiarizing, because I also work with 16-year-olds, and when I take them to the garden, they don't know what to do because it's just an alien space in a way. And so finding ways just to initiate an initial exploration. Quizzes are good, and treasure hunts and competitions. Can I just say hi to Mum and Dad? They're watching too.
Lovely. Yeah, well, I liked the whole way that you talked a lot about increasing curiosity. We all need that, because it leads to wonderful places, doesn't it? And the little experiments you were doing, like I thought of it when Albie was saying the watering experiment you did. That looked really interesting.
So the watering, we had one kid. Well, Albie, our kids, watering is the funnest thing, and poking each other with sticks. Those are and doing jousting with the sticks. Those are the funnest things. And so one day I saw a kid with the watering can spinning round to see how the water goes, like while spinning. So I said, well, why don't you do that more productively inside the greenhouse where the water is going on plants? And he went, okay. And stood in the middle and spun around and watered everywhere. But we have, with those water systems, they have a funnel. And so the kids really enjoy filling them up. And we measure how quickly they go down with sticks. So sticks and water works a treat.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, we just got maybe one little question that I did see a couple of times, Charles, was maybe you could give us your top tips for sowing now, just for all the gardeners out there.
Cool. Well, do you know what? It's a funny thing, but today is 2 days before full moon. And it's a really good time for sowing anything, because seeds are like people, you know, the moment they enter the planet, so to speak, or get ignited by meeting moisture and sufficient warmth, they take a sort of horoscope of where they are, and that lives with them. 2 Russian scientists called Kalisko, who researched this for 10 years in Prague in 1925 to 35, and their results are written up. You can find it on the internet. But basically, long story short, 2 days before full moon, if any seeds you sow, any seeds will grow to a greater outcome. And that includes root vegetables. It's interesting because it's often said that root vegetables you should sow on a waning moon because that encourages more root proportion to leaf. But they found that even for carrots and beetroot, they got not only bigger carrots and beetroot, but they said they also stored better. They got a better quality. So that hints at how much there is to learn. I reckon this could be good for kids, because what fun one could have setting up trials. You know, get them all labelled, and then they could watch and record the growth of what's going on. Different stages. It's generally thought the one day not to sow is on full moon itself. So that would be Thursday. Friday, 14th, I think it is. But all other days, you know, map it out. It'll be fascinating, and you can share your results, and everyone can benefit from that. So I think that's another incentive that we picked up, wasn't it? You know, that children want to give as well as receive, and enabling that is very important for all of us. So other thing, well, that's everything to sow really, but probably the top one is tomatoes. Now is peak time for sowing tomatoes in the UK.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, thanks, Charles. We've got we've kind of sort of wrapped it up now, I think, in terms of timing. And just one last thing to mention is that because you've registered for the webinar, we will be adding you to a mailing list for updates. If you prefer not to receive any emails from us, please do just get in touch with us directly, and we won't be doing that for you. Okay.
So thank you to everyone for joining, and thank you especially to our 6 star members of this panel. It's been the greatest fun. And share the link, the YouTube link, which you should be receiving with your friends as well, because I think there was so much really joyful stuff in what we've just heard, and we can all help a lot of people through sharing it. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Do we need to turn something off?